The conditions in Abu Dhabi are a hard one to predict, even for the best of teams. But two things that are going to play a key role are the crew on board and the configurations of the F50s. Stevie, what do we have to consider going into this event?
I think the biggest factor in any of this is if there's not as much wind, how many people are on the boat. I kind of feel that's the deriding factor. I mean, the beauty of SailGP is once you get your bit of equipment, it's the same as everyone else's.
Yeah.
So whether we have the light wind foils, the high wind foils, the big wing, the medium wing, or the little wing, they'll all have it.
Yeah.
So in some ways, yes, Lisa's going to probably geek out on us in a minute, why it's kind of absolutely crucial and really important that they know exactly where to put the flap on this and that and all the rest of it. I think the human factor is what's going to determine the winner. I don't think I'm sort of surprising anyone by saying that. And then it's, when there's only 3-4 on board, there's such an overload of jobs to do. They're so kind of overloaded in terms of the roles and how they then go about their decision making, that's just huge. So I think the conditions wise, it's going to all be about how many people are on the boat. I actually think these top 4 teams that are going to be in that battle for the top 3, when you do bring on the grinders, the two sort of generally speaking big units at the front of the boat, they've actually all got really strong grinding team lineups. So normally we'd say, it's conditions that's going to suit the British or suit the Australians because they bring on their big grinders. That means they can drive that wing sail efficiently. Sure. But actually all 4 teams bring on an awful lot of horsepower. So that's not going to be a change. I think it's when you get down to 4 on the boat, how they split that roles and get the most out of each other, because it's just so hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the other thing, just looking at how the last sort of events have played out, is the difference between 3 or 4 is huge. And I think that overloading with 3 is where I personally think the British have shone. And then even actually the Aussies, I think with 3 have done quite well. But when you put that fourth person on, like say for the Spanish, they actually do a lot better. So I think that decision of 3 or 4 is massive. But then the other thing is, because it's not like configuration, which in the morning, the race committee might make a call 5 minutes before the race, and all of a sudden you're like, hang on, which job is what? Like, what are you doing? And having to switch into that gear is something that's incredibly difficult.
And for the more casual fans out there, how does the process work? It's a lighter day, there's 6 on the boat. Who goes first? Who makes the decision?
Yeah, so the reason that we're dropping people off the boat is because of weight. So if it's lighter wind, you want to basically deload the boat so we can pop up on the foils easier so that they can go faster, but the same jobs need to be done. So the first thing that they do is, if they go from, sometimes they can go 6, 5, 4, 3, but the first 2 to go are the big heavy grinders. So they get off the boat, and then 4 people on board, you still have your strategist, but the strategist moves into the grinding position. So for most teams, that's the female athlete. They'll head up the front, so they're turning the handles, but also trying to contribute to strategy. But generally, the driver will take on more of that responsibility in that situation. So then you've got your wing trimmer, flight control, and driver still. And then when we go to 3, the female athlete generally steps off, or that strategist steps off the boat, and you've got 3. In the past, we saw sort of like different ways of doing it, but generally we see those 3 key players stay on. But one thing that's quite interesting is, when you look at that flight controller, they're jumping into the grinding pedestal back to flying, while the driver might be flying and driving. And so seeing how much they have to move within the boat and transfer is not only the physical kind of learning how to do it, but also the communication of handing those jobs over. You've got it, I've got it, and making sure that that's super slick.
And I think what's really unique that I don't think we have done a good enough job of yet, as I'm talking to myself here as the commentator.
Explain it better, Stevie. Come on.
But is actually, yes, we've got the 3 on the boat or the 4 on the boat, but they're linked intrinsically to the coach and the booth. So on shore, the coach can talk to them, can be giving them that information about distance to the boundary, because again, it's important to remember that the pitch we see on the telly, it's not, we don't, SailGP don't go out there with a can of paint and draw on the water. A lot of environmentalists will be very glad to know. But we beam that down on it, and it's a sort of imaginary boundary. So the sailors can't see where the touchline is, if you like. They can't see the side of the pitch. They've got it on a screen on the boat. Now, if you're trying to look at a screen to work out where it is, sail, look at this wind, again, you say wind. How does anyone see the wind? Well, we don't see the wind. We see the action of the wind on the water. So you're trying to read the different colours and textures on the water to give you an idea. Am I about to sail into more wind or less wind? I do not want to go to less wind. I've got, that's how the sailors are piecing around. So if your head's in the boat doing these jobs, you can't see that live information. So the coaches can actually be helped lay out the strategy. If you turn left here, you can get to the next mark in 2 manoeuvres. If you turn right, you're going to have to do 3. Well, that's crucial. So the coaches play a huge role there. And again, when you listen in, the teams are only really learning how to deal with that right now. So I think that's a sort of something
it's a lot of pressure on the coach that they generally haven't had in like traditional sailing.
Usually as a coach it's great because you get to be the hindsight
like,
king.
They should have gone this way. And then but now they've got an opportunity.
Now it's only the commentator that gets to be the hindsight king. Yes, exactly.
And I think that's the thing is like recently we've heard, people like I remember in Kiddies Dylan being like, is it one and in? Is it one and in? And I was like, who was not responding to him? And then I realised it was the coach sitting on the hill trying to, because he was so overloaded, he needed somebody else to deal with that problem.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned you're going from 6 people to potentially 4 or 3, and there's still 6 jobs to do.
Yeah.
Which teams are historically strongest in those times when it's 3 up, 4 up?
I think the teams that have had time on tools really. So you look at Slingsby; it's had an awful lot of time in the boat. Again, it's how much of these jobs are muscle memory.
Sure.
And that only, I think, really comes with time. Like Lisa's Olympic silver medalist. She would be on autopilot for a lot of the roles she's doing on her boat because she's done it so much. Slingsby's had the most time driving the boat, and then when he suddenly has to actually switch over and fly the boat, because Jason Waterhouse has had to get out and grind the winch to help Chris Draper pull the wing in, then it's still instinctive. He can still be looking out and he's sort of feeling the boat a little bit rather than, when you watch Jason flying the boat, he's locked in, like, because he's doing it to an absolute percentile, whereas Tom can sort of sit at 90% of, and be that, but he can do that feeling. Whereas I think some of the newer drivers that are coming into that, if they're focused on flying the boat, they're not focused on the racing.
Okay, because it's a whole new skill.
Exactly. So I think we've seen, ultimately the cream rises to the top, right? So I'd argue we're clutching at straws to say that Tom's better than Dylan or better than Pete in that. They've all had the time, but I think Slingsby's had the most time.
Agree.
And Waterhouse has had the most time. And as I say, that's where, but Waterhouse and Parkinson, you'd take either, I think. Leo's new. 2-3 seasons, we might be talking about Leo as the great flight controller. He's season 1, he's not earned that yet.
Yeah.
Let's see. If he goes out and delivers in the grand final, then fair play. But I think right now he's got a lot of pressure and something to prove. The wing trimmers, you'd take any of those 3. Draper, Jensen, or Toot, they're proper. I think maybe where the Kiwis have got that little edge is you've got Burling and Took, who've sort of sailed together at Olympic level for years and years and years. There's, again, we'll get Lisa to say how she was in her, but there's an unspoken telepathy between them, an instinct. They know what they're going to do. Slingsby and Draper knew this season. Fletcher and Jensen knew this season. Easy for me to say. So when the pressure really, 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 really comes on, Burling and Took are going to deal with that. Will the other teams make because they're only going to take a minute mistake. Yeah. And no pressure, guys. You're going to lose $2 million.
Well, you also haven't mentioned Diego and Flo.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah, which they sailed together and they've just become world champions as well.
Olympic gold medalists. Yeah.
So they have this like unspoken sort of instinct. But what I think Diego, he's got a couple of seasons under his belt now, but same thing, that like when the pressure's on and you've got a fly drive tactic strategy, it's just that intuition where you don't have to think about it, you just do it. And if you're too busy thinking about it, you're compromised.
Well, also, this is the best thing with the Spanish team, a bit of a digression, but not only have they got all those roles to do, they speak English and Spanish on the boat.
Wow.
And they flip between the two during the race. Anyway, that's what they do, but I think they got another layer of complexity in there. But yeah, there's so much in that detail, but I think any of the teams on the day, it's going to be who deals with the pressure, stays on roll, and then Lisa, you got to get, because I think it is as much as I've said it's the people, I think the equipment is a thing.
Yeah.
And they've only just had these new light airfoils, haven't they?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of goes onto your point of like this intuition thing. So obviously you have to have the intuition of like the muscle memory, I do this and I can do this as well and blah, 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 blah. But what I think is like when it's a new feature to the boat, like, the new light air T-foils, we've had them for 2 events, but we still don't know how they respond in every situation. So the flight controllers, what I look at is what you've mentioned, but like Waterhouse and Parkinson, is that they're the ones that have adapted the fastest. They are the elite flight controllers and their learning curve has been faster than anyone else. So I think for those two, whilst there's still a lot of unknowns for them in terms of exactly how they can push these foils to the absolute limit, I think that they've got a little bit more of a handle on it than the others, and that could be experience or precision. But then the other really cool thing I'm really excited about is that it looks like we're going to have the 27.5 meter wing. So traditionally we had the 18, 24 and 29 as part of the outfit, but we've got this new 27.5, which was tested in Cadiz by the Spanish. Okay. Spanish are the only team that have sailed on that wing.
I wonder how the other teams feel about that.
Livid. I would imagine. Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, and I mean, you guys walk around and see them. I mean, I suppose it'd be interesting. How much do you hear them talking about the new kit? And when you're wandering around, I imagine they're learning sort of. Yeah.
Well, when their new light air T-foils came on in Geneva, the Australians tested them because their platform and wing is set up with all the fibre optics. Because when their wing collapsed, it was an opportunity to sort of put some technology in there so that they can do testing and they can really understand the depth of the boat. So everyone was pretty annoyed that the Aussies got the T-foils in Geneva, and obviously they were the fastest boat out there in Geneva. Didn't come away with the win, but were very quick around the course. So then they didn't get the same luxury. They had to lend their boat to the Spanish in Cadiz. So, they're trying to share it around, but only one team gets to do it.
What I don't get with that, another digression.
Yeah.
Why let any of those top four teams do the testing and not give it to the French or the Germans?
Because we love drama at SailGP. Yeah. This gives us something to talk about.
That one maybe. Yeah. No, that's great. I think what's really interesting about that, new things, people have never, one team has tested them, but you've never seen it in a race environment before, and that just adds a whole new dynamic to that final. But something I just wanted to go back to something you said that was interesting about pressure is that race where there's that huge amount of money on the line. Peter Burling's been in it before. Tom Slingsby's obviously been in it before. Diego last year won it. Dylan Fletcher has never been put in that position before, but he seems like an Iceman. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think actually, Dylan is somebody.
Dylan's done that race 4 or 5 times in his sleep.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's definitely been in that race in his head. But
yeah, and I think like Dylan is someone that is just so. Yeah, like as you said, Iceman, like he's just so driven to win. Like his first event in Dubai, I remember back in SailGP, and I said, "Oh, that's great, you came second. Like your first event must be stoked." He's like, "Yeah, but I feel like we left stuff on the table. I really want to win." And I'm like, "Dude, it's your first event. Be happy." And so I think he's just got such this winning mindset, and winning his gold medal in Tokyo, that came down to the very last moment of the race. He had to push. He was fighting Peter Burling, and I think just. Whilst it isn't a $2 million race, the pressure of racing for an Olympic gold medal, which has been your dream since you're a kid, is, pretty high pressure. So I think going into that situation, it's a very different environment. It's a 3-boat race, winner takes all, obviously. But I think knowing when you're in that moment that A, you believe in yourself, that you can do it, but B, that when the pressure's on, that's when you rise. And I think that that's what makes these guys so amazing, because every time they're put in that position, they rise to the challenge. With Diego, obviously he's had that gold medal experience. He was super dominant. SailGP last season, they were the underdogs coming in. So I think that this season, if they make it, the pressure is probably something new, a little bit new for them, or maybe they haven't been in that pressure cooker as much. But, all of these teams have dealt with something in their career that has put them in that situation where they've had to elevate. So do you agree?
I do. No, yes, I do. Sorry. No,
I was like, okay, well, someone disagrees.
No, for once, I totally agree, Lisa. But the point I was going to make actually is I think there's an interesting thing to he's not been in that final before. It's almost, I think, will be a relaxation. I mean, for Emirates Great Britain, I think we could say right now they've had a great season. right? Spain, well, they were defending champions. If they're not in the final, if they don't win, is that a failure? Slingsby's a 3-time champion. He's got, he's been there. He's probably going to go into that race for the next few seasons as the favourite to win it because he's been there, he's done it. Awful lot of pressure on him.
Expectation is there.
Burling and Took, they've won everything in sailing. They have not won SailGP.
And we haven't even mentioned Hugh Jackman or Ryan Reynolds watching Tom Slingsby.
Yeah, so exactly. There's that added pressure for Tom of it's, the brand and everything now, and that backing and support they've got. Them, I'm sure there'll be pressure. The Blackfalls have to win. To me, if the Blackfalls, the Aussies or the Spanish don't come away from Abu Dhabi having won, their season's been a failure. Mm-hmm. I think. They'll say it's been all right.
It's like the bar. Where is the bar for everybody? And I think with the Blackfalls, they were so dominant last season, and they just did not sail well in San Francisco at all. So walking away from that was a huge disappointment. So I think here is for them the redemption story. Also, there's ownership for Australia, Emirates, Great Britain, the Blackfalls, and I think even Spain to an extent is they are still trying to get their big sponsor on the sail and winning a SailGP Championship. So whilst it's yes, I want to win, yes, I'm driven for this $2 million, I also want to, sign a contract and get an own team. So I think for some of them that would be playing in their minds a little bit.
And you can clearly see as well, if we touch on Dylan again, in that Cadiz final where he just hooked the Blackfalls at that last mark, he's ruthless. And as you say,
he's not afraid to.
That's when he rises, and I think we see that across the whole fleet, really, especially in those top 4. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah,
I mean, we bang on about it, but these are the best sailors in the world, so they're going to take that inch when it comes, and I'm sure Dylan will be more than ready, as we know the other teams will be. It's going to come down to absolute minutiae, like you said in that final in Cadiz. You listen to the comms. The Kiwis didn't think you could go a left turn and get there in one move. If you see how the British executed that, they came in over speed. They sailed an unnatural angle to suddenly make the course a bit wider, effectively further out. They then got just to going fast enough to land a foiling tack. They nailed the foiling tack. Any one of those things they got a little bit wrong. I just really, really hope it comes down to that final gate. And as I say, Ian Murray gives us a course where they can go left or right. And it's basically a really hard call to make because,
who gets the most out of the F50 in that moment out of themselves. I think that's the cool thing that we're seeing with racing. It's everything has to be pushed to the absolute limit. You've got to squeeze every centimetre out of the course, every kilometre per hour of speed. So I think it's that's what makes this season so exciting, is that while we have 4 boats vying for a 3-boat final, that the level is so high that not one person on the boat cannot be sailing at an optimal level.
It's all to play for. It's going to be really interesting to see how both the crew and configuration has an impact on the boats as they take on that $2 million race in the grand final in Abu Dhabi. Who will thrive and who will maybe fail? We'll see.